Hello, this is Mr. Quinn, and in this series of videos, we're going to model for you the process of imagining, designing, and building a project in Scratch. So the idea here is to model for you the process that I would like you to use as you develop your own project. So as you've used tutorials in the past, it's important to understand that the design of this series of videos is for you to stop the video whenever you need to as you catch up typing the code in your own Scratch window. Well then, alright, let's get started. The way to start here is to open up a new Scratch project, and this is the screen you would see. It always comes up with a cat sprite, so we will not be using the cat sprite, so let's get rid of that. Now it turns out that the sprites that I'd like to use in this project that I'm building are actually not in Scratch 2.0, this version. So I'm asking you to upload a starter file, and all that starter file has is the two sprites that I intended to use. So to do that, I sent you an email, and there's a link here to a starter file that I would like you to download, and then we can load it up into Scratch. So in your downloads folder, you should see a DL BAT and B starter. DL stands for download. So if you right click and download on that from Google Drive, so you'll see it now in your downloads folder. And there it is, right? Let's go now back to Scratch and import that Scratch starter file into our project, right? So the way to do that is simply to go up to the File menu and select Load from your computer. So what will actually happen here is the file that you just downloaded from my Google Drive will now be loaded from your downloads folder up back into Scratch. So we just have to navigate to the downloads folder, and there it is. So open that file. Yes, replace the contents, and there we go. So you see the exact same screen as before, but now you'll notice that we have two sprites, the BAT and the B. As I said earlier, the reason we downloaded this starter file is because the B and the BAT are, for some reason, not sprites that were used in the newest version of Scratch. So we had to go back in time. I had to export these two sprite characters from the old version and then import into my new version here, which I've shared with you. So the next thing to do right away is go ahead and just rename this. We don't need the DL. In fact, I would like you to replace DL with your initials. So I'll just say JQ, right? And we don't need the word starter because now this is going to be your project name. So one thing that's a little bit weird is that we don't see these two sprites on the stage, and that's because as we downloaded them, they're hidden. So step one, for each of these sprites, go ahead and click on the Show tab, and there they are on the screen. So like in any program that you're about to build, you need a plan. What is this program supposed to do? How will it do it? What does it look like? What is the user interface? All of those things. When programming in Scratch, you're seeing those same components of a program implemented in a visual output, the Scratch animation. But it's important to understand that the exact same process of designing, building, testing a program is going to be true in every other computer language that you learn, including Python, that will start next week. So the big ideas here are not only for this programming environment, Scratch. It's important to understand that. So listen carefully as I demonstrate for you the process that you'll be following as you design algorithms for the future programs that you'll be writing. So for this project, I've had to imagine, what's the action here? Okay, I've got two sprites. What are they going to do? Why is it interesting? What's the backgrounds? What's the actions? So if a bat collides with a bee, what is it that I want to happen? All of those things should be something that you've thought about and maybe even sort of started to write down a list of behaviors or actions for these two sprites. And of course, the results of them interacting with each other, or in this case, colliding. So what I envision is in this program, I have the bee character. Let's click on him. And all he's doing is he's traveling left and right. He's collecting pollen, going about his merry way, minding his own business. So on your stage, you might want to have the idea that he's flying in the sky, and maybe some ground just to give some sense of sky and ground. A basic outdoor background. So he's flying at some altitude here. In addition, at the same time, we have this bat. And bats also fly. Let's just say they don't fly horizontally. They go up and down and up and down. So to keep this simple, I envision that my bat is going to have 4 moves. And these would be glide statements. So start to think about, what block you would use to do that. So this bat is going to glide down to, say, the ground. And it's going to go back up again to the opposite corner. And it's going to glide down to the ground again and glide back to the opposite corner. Glide down to the ground again, back to the opposite corner. So students, there are 4 glide statements here to complete this cycle. Let's do it one more time. He's going to start always at this upper left corner and glide down to a certain y coordinate, and you won't go below that, and we'll call that the ground. And then he's going to glide from where he is to the upper right corner. Then he's going to reverse this and glide down to a different location on the x-axis, but the same y coordinate. In other words, where the bee lands, whether he lands here, or whether he lands way over here, or whether he lands way down here, that's going to be a random choice. And we have a way to generate random numbers. The second part of his leg then is always gliding to the corner. All right, so that's what I envision. What we need is to create a background so we can establish these x and y values. So let's start there. We need some backdrops for our stage. So let's go to the stage first, and we'll notice there's no code, and there are no backdrops. So I can imagine that we're going to have 3 backdrops. Let's just go, whoops, didn't mean that. I meant to do not choose a backdrop. We're not using the existing backdrops available in Scratch. We're going to construct our own. So let's go paint a new backdrop. But the other things that we can do, we can upload a backdrop that you've already made, or we can pick one from a large menu of them. All right, let's go into our first backdrop. Here it is. One of the first things we'll need to do is convert to the bitmap. So we're going to grab our paintbrush and select an appropriate thickness. I think 10 is probably fine. And let's make sure we're filling in black. And all we're going to do is draw the ground. So the ground is, you have to be kind of careful with your mouse so it's not all herky-jerky, but the ground is never flat. It's kind of hilly, right? There's no big crest, but it's definitely not flat. That would be fine. Now we need to create the idea that we have the upper half being the sky and the lower half being grass. So this is pretty simple. Grass is going to be green, so let's go click on our paint can and go up to our fill color, and you'll notice, first of all, if the brightness is all the way down to 0, you're not going to see any colors. So, crank the brightness up so you can see the palette of colors here. Look up in the fill box, and when you see the shade of green that you like, let's do something like that, then you can simply drop that in. So this is actually the reason we need the bitmap, so that the fill works correctly. And in the same way then, let's go pick a slightly different color. How about some shade of nice light blue for the sky? Now you can be very precise with this if you like. You can spent a lot of time selecting appropriate colors, but I'll just pick something rather light so we can still see the bat and the bee. And we'll call it a bright day. So paint can and boom. So the thing to understand about this fill that we just used is you cannot have any breaks in this line here because it really does create two separate spaces. If there was a hole here in this line, one color would bleed through and it would just fill the entire screen with that color. Well, while we're here, I also envision that this program is going to have some screens that appear at the end. So the idea here is that you can either win or lose. So really, I'm thinking about a game. So we're going to have to come up with some rules or some situations that trigger the change in backdrop to what I'll call the win screen, and then of course the lose screen. So we need two more backdrops. Let's go into the editor and paint. So by the way, the name of backdrop 2 we can change. Let's see, what do we rename that? Yeah, backdrop true is not a very meaningful name, so let's just rename this win screen. All right, so the win screen is just a text box. All it's going to say is you win or some other related message. Well, first, just like before, we'd like to put a color on the background. So let's go ahead and use that same, actually it's change colors. We don't want to use the same two colors. I'm thinking of a nice, hold on, yellowish color. Where are we? Way back there. Yellow, orange in that family. Something that grabs you. Great. So splash that color on the entire screen, but notice that won't work because we need to be in the bitmap mode. So same color works, paint can, and drop it on. Now remember, this is not the stage where we're playing the game. All it's going to do is have a text box on it. So the text for this is going to be a little message. So I create a text box. So this is weird. Just start at roughly the height where you want to see the text, and indent roughly where you want your margins to be, and click the text box and start typing. So we're going to say not you win, but okay, we're typing, but there's no black text here. So while we're in text mode, I'm going to need to change my text color and go back to black if that's what I want. All right, so every time you do that, you might have to start the text again if there's nothing in there. All right, now we got a black font. We're going to say, hooray, Bat Boy, you survived. All right. So now, like any other graphic, you can grab this thing by the corners and enlarge it. So there's our win screen. So let's go do the same thing. We'll paint another screen, and this one's going to be our lose screen. Once again, we need to select a background color. I'm trying to avoid the ones that I've used before, so we'll use a nice color of sort of a red for our lose screen. So let's go drop that in. Again, we have to, every time we create a new costume, or we need to convert to vector. Drop in our red color, there we go. Once again, change our color to a black for our text box, and go ahead and start that right about there. And the message here is something a little different. So in this game, as the bat is flying around, every time he hits the bee is going to sting him. So we need a message that says, after a certain number of stings, game over, you've been stung too many times. So that's going to be our message, and you can now just enlarge that a little. If you lose your grab bars, you can always just put a little box around here and grab it like so. Perfect. And of course, we're going to name this one lose, and the first backdrop will be play. All right, we'll see you in the next video.